Hello there and good morning. Now, this is what happens when you import conflict. There were horrific scenes in Amsterdam last night as Israeli football fans were attacked en masse by a certain demographic. Yes, a football match between Maccabi Tel Aviv and Ajax descended into the pits as attacks against Israelis took place across the city and arrests were made. And you might think it's like a throwback to 1970s UK. But last night was not about the football, was it? Amsterdam, Netherlands, where they all bicycle. And it's the home to the house of the wartime Jewish diarist Anne Frank. Let that sink in. And before I bring Richard in on this, just to say we in the UK could soon have our own problem with this in just a few days' time. Richard.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, it's not safe for Jews in Europe. The safest place for Jews right now, believe it or not, is in Israel. And that's a hell of a statement considering the events of October the 7th last year. So this is from The Guardian. Israel's national security minister urged its citizens in the Dutch city to stay in their hotel rooms. The Prime Minister's office said in a second statement, fans who went to see a football game encountered anti-Semitism and were attacked with unimaginable cruelty just because of their Jewishness and Israeliness. Israel's Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir said on an X post. And it continues, local police said 57 people had been held after the game as pro-Palestinian demonstrators tried to reach the Johan Cruyff Stadium. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Yep. Johan Cruyff Stadium, even though the city had forbidden them to protest. End of quote. That's from The Guardian. And I'll now move over to the BBC. And Joe Inwood, he said, there are many videos online showing what appear to be attacks on fans of Maccabi Tel Aviv in Amsterdam last night. One man is punched unconscious, while another shows someone in a canal being told to say, Free Palestine. They have been condemned by the authorities here in Jerusalem as premeditated, anti-Semitic and a pogrom. End of quote from John Edward there from the BBC. Look, we have Remembrance Sunday coming up, and what I want to know is this the Europe that our fathers and grandfathers died for in the Second World War? They liberated the camps, we'll call them, of Hitler, those camps of evil, and now we sit back and open the doors to those that would repeat that very same genocide. Stand in front of a British soldier who died on the beaches of Normandy and tell him of the Europe of today. Look him in the eye and tell him of his descendants who would chant from the river to the sea at the cenotaph. What would he do? What would that soldier do? Those that chant from the river to the sea, they want us to hate. They want us to hate the cenotaph and the sacrifices made for this country.
Yeah, what gets me also is that Benjamin Netanyahu was forced to order rescue planes in. I mean, I know they were later cancelled, but he felt that horrified by the whole thing unfolding that he was going to send rescue planes into Amsterdam to take Israelis out immediately, and also with healthcare workers on board. And that's how bad it was.
Oh, it's dreadful. You know, when the left and the anti-Israel brigade come out and say that Israel is a bunch of land grabbers, even though they conceded Gaza and other areas that for those who identify as Palestinian, that land was given to Gaza, basically. Was it 2005, 2006? I might be wrong there, Jeff. That Israel passed Gaza back in.
Yeah, they moved out. They were under attack.
Yeah.
And they said, we can't deal with this. If you want to have your own Gaza, then there you are. They moved out in 2005. And in 2007, the Gazan people elected Hamas as their leaders. So that was that. And there hasn't been an election ever since.
Well, you just talk about election. Just think about what Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm not praising him or anything. I'm not saying anything about any. I'm trying to remain as neutral as I possibly can. But at the same time, I'm looking and I'm thinking, if I had because this is about the continued existence of the Jewish race and people, and if I had that as my responsibility, I would possibly be looking for land right now to house those people. I'm not justifying any of this, but to understand this, what's going on right now, this is not about free Palestine. This is about them wanting to remove Israel and Jews from the face of the earth. I mean, I don't see Egypt or any other Middle Eastern country saying welcome, coming in. Do you? Funny how the Rafah border with Gaza has been closed for a very long time. I wonder why. But I digress here, because Jews across Europe need somewhere safe to exist, and if they're not safe living in Europe, and they will flee, and that will be a victory for a certain demographic. But the liberal left needs to know, what they need to know is that they will be next in the push of unsaid and unspecified demographic. So for assimilation. So the secularist atheists out there had better get ready to change their belief systems and orientate themselves towards the beliefs of the newcomers, or it will be forced upon them. Thank you, secularism. Wonderful job you've done there. You opened the door to hell across Europe. And right now the Jews are paying the price, and then the Christians, then you, all you secularists out there who think that it's fine and dandy to abandon our Judeo-Christian heritage, to stand for nothing, that anything goes, that cultural relativity is a thing when it isn't.
Well, the way I would put it is, when a country has no grounding in anything other than the secularist acceptance that everything, however good or bad, is equal, and that's where we're at, then we have a problem. And boy, that problem is growing by the day.
Yeah. Oh, one of the comments here, Cornwall Nick, pro-genocide podcast. Sorry, I don't know where you're getting off on that one, mate. But this podcast is about the fact that, is that meant to, are you trying to say that you think it's okay for Jews to be hunted down across Europe? Don't forget, there was something called the Second Exodus in the last century, where Jews were basically fleeing from every country around the world, especially the Middle East, trying to find somewhere to go. They were being hunted down. No, this is an anti-genocide podcast, to be honest with you. Sorry, that really grinds me.
Anyway, that quote you made of Itamar Ben-Gvir earlier, which said, fans who went to see a football game encountered anti-Semitism and were attacked with unimaginable cruelty just because of their Jewishness and Israeliness. Just like to point out, that seems to copy the way that the Islamophobia definition is framed about a certain ness. If you go and look at that, you'll see it's framed in the same way. I think the Israelis are looking at this and thinking, well, if they can play that game, so can we. That's just an interesting observation. Now, police also said it was unclear who had taken part in the riots, because, strangely, those involved were wearing dark clothing, like the Antifa types that we have over here. They weren't wearing football supporter gear, the usual bright scarves and the hats and all that sort of thing. So that tells me a lot about how premeditated that might have been. I wouldn't want to endanger any future court cases or anything like that, but it does raise the prospect of it being a bit premeditated and people geared up for the night. So there you go.
It makes me so angry. I mean, we've seen this happen before. This is why on the Unite the Kingdom march that everyone said, don't wear masks. We're trying to be open with who we are. We are accountable. Here's our faces. This is who we are. And we don't want any trouble. Of course, then you get these masked persons wearing dark clothing, as you rightly said. And and look what happens.
Yeah.
Funny that.
Yes.
Not funny at all.
Well, the trouble is that that they'll try to somehow brush this under the carpet I'm sure that this won't see the light of day in a couple of days' time, because the authorities across the Western world are having to hide more and more stuff from us every day just to keep their diversity program running, whatever the cost, either financially or to our heritage. It doesn't matter, as long as that diversity program keeps running. Yeah. And I reckon the next move will be to prevent Israelis going anywhere. If they don't travel, there'll be no trouble, that sort of thing, because there are lots of people waiting to hurt them. So we won't be preventing those who want to hurt people. We'll be preventing the people who are going to be hurt from moving around. And we saw that in London, didn't we? With Jews being told to stay at home, stay away from the marches and all that sort of thing. And I can no longer trust the authorities. Can you? I mean, we've got to a real stage in our society where we're almost being forced to pick a side, aren't we? We're almost being forced to pick a side from the Middle East to support. And if you don't support one side, then you must, by definition, support the other. And if you don't support either of them, then you hate both of them. That's where we're at now, ladies and gentlemen.
I've had enough of a lot of the liberal left, Western so-called commentators talking about things going on in the Middle East. They have no idea. So the other day, in the comment section, somebody said, Jeff and Richard need to reveal their genetic heritage, okay? Making out that we were both Jewish, okay? Which, by the way, what's wrong with that, incidentally? Okay? What's wrong with being Jewish? Okay, so I tell you what, I'll give you a breakdown of I've got in front of my DNA ancestry, okay? Now, I was put into an orphanage when I was 10 days old and adopted by a Welsh family. However, I do have some interesting DNA. Iran, 39%. England, 25%. Scotland, 17%. Lower Central Asia, 4%. Germanic Europe, 4%. Anatolia and the Caucasus, which is Armenia, 3%. Southern Italy, 3%. The Netherlands, 2%. Ireland, 2%. Mongolia, 1%. So there you go. So next time you start saying
where's the Welsh?
Yeah, there isn't any. As I said, I was adopted by a Welsh family after being in an orphanage. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you know, somebody's going to say, "Oh, you're pro-Israel, you're Jewish, aren't you?" I don't care what somebody's race is or nationality. And if you want to start calling me racist, go ahead. Go ahead. Beautiful. Go on. Say that I'm pro-Israel. Well, I am pro-Israel, actually. I think Israel's got every right to exist. Why don't you? That's my question. And that's where anti-Semitism comes in. There's an evil. There's an inherent evil in this world. It is a spiritual evil where, and if you dislike Israel, if you're really against Israel, you've got an issue with the big man upstairs, believe me, Jeff.
Yeah. And me, of course, I'm 100% English.
Yes, well, I've said before, I'm sure there's some French in there, mate.
Oh, never. No, I haven't had a DNA test, but I am actually brought up as a Church of England. And I now attend an Orthodox church. So does that make me a Jew? You know, is this some sort of a hidden Jew somewhere? No. I've just done a lot of research into this whole issue, and I know exactly where I stand, and it's behind Israel.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? What's wrong with that? Yeah. They're the stopgap right now, holding hell back from the rest of Europe.
Yeah. Anyway, I did say earlier that we might have a problem of our own coming up with all of this, because there is a student activist plan for Remembrance Day protests to remember the martyrs of their preferred demographic. And from the Telegraph, the Student Federation for a Liberated Palestine, a network of 15 pro-Palestinian student groups from universities across the UK, has called for a Student Day of Action on November the 11th, which is Monday, which is Armistice Day, the day after Remembrance Sunday. Monday the 11th is Armistice Day. That's Monday the 11th hour on the 11th day, and all that of the 11th month. That's where that comes from. But there also appear to be hijack attempts being made for Sunday the 10th, Remembrance Sunday, as well, with GB News saying demonstrators are going to gather in Birmingham to mourn the murder of innocent Palestinians and march through the city centre. Now, as Martin Daubney of GB News said, every weekend is a pro-Palestine day, but this weekend is a sacred day for our veterans and the country to pay their respects to the fallen. And as a veteran, I feel very strongly about this. As far as I'm concerned, Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthi and Iranian terrorists do not qualify.
Absolutely.
Student activists are trying to normalise terrorist activity. They should be called out for it. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, as somebody, as I said, who is partly Iranian, okay, I can tell you now. I mean, a lot of these people on these protests, right? What they don't understand is, did their families flee Iran? Okay, no, they didn't. Oh, all right then, come back and talk to me later. All right, that's point one. The other point is, well, I speak to a lot of Iranians, not a lot these days, but what people don't understand is that the people of Iran have been living under the occupation of a terrorist state, we'll call it. All right, they've been oppressed for so long. The people of Iran, most people in Iran, don't want what is offered to them. If you want to talk about a concentration camp, okay, that's what they're calling Gaza. Say it's the world's biggest concentration camp. No, Iran is actually, because I can tell you now, if you knew some of the things that are going on there, things that are kept from the media that you don't hear about, you'd understand. It's not so much a physical constant in terms of getting people dying. We're talking about psychologically and spiritually. They are dying. And yes, people are dying. If you're homosexual, my goodness, your life is over in Iran. It is over. And there's a lot of people out there who seem to think, oh, what was it, Queers for Palestine? Okay, what is that? That to me is like, don't you understand? Don't you understand? There are people in Iran who want Israel to go into Iran and bomb certain areas to remove the occupation of their country, to get rid of the Iranian Guard there, the Revolutionary Guard, or Islamic Revolutionary Guard, actually. This is the situation. And a lot of people in the West just don't get it. They don't get it. They don't understand that people in the Middle East are living under oppression. A lot of Islamic nations right now in the Middle East are, the people there, they don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to go on about it too much, but there's far too much conjecture by a liberal left media and students who think that they've been brainwashed at the end of the day. You can't blame all students. We've allowed this brainwashing to happen, and this is because of secularism. Anything goes. Cultural relativism is a thing. All right, okay, fair enough. Whatever. Rubbish. There you go, Jeff.
Yeah, I get your drift there. One says, I fully support Israel's right to exist. Does Israel support Europeans' right to exist? I've never seen them saying otherwise. I don't know. It's not even crossed my mind to question how they feel about us. They seem to trade with us. I know we've had some problems in the past, especially during the formation of Israel. At the same time, believe it or not, Jordan, the Kingdom of Jordan, was made at the same time, about the same time as Israel was formed, in exactly the same way as Israel was formed, all out of the British Mandate. A lot of people realise that. Oh, come on. That's the one I want. British Londoners need to be free. Yes. Can you imagine someone saying, from the channel to the ocean? That would go down like a storm, wouldn't it? Yes. Anyway, thanks Western governments for allowing this to happen. This is the problem. We've, as I've said, we've imported the conflict, and we've said that your conflict is, whatever it is legitimate. You can protest here, and it's turned from a protest into a fight. That's how these things start. We should have nipped it all in the bud right away and said, no, you can't be doing that here, because we're not letting you import your conflict. But when you've got open borders, it is very, very, very difficult to do that.
Yeah, it is.
So, anyway, it's been a bit of sort of surprising news overnight. Well, I'm not a football fan, so I'm not paying attention who's playing who in football. So maybe the very fact that the Israelis turned up has triggered a large demographic. And wherever they go now in the Western world, they are going to trigger that demographic, I'm afraid. It's going to happen. I don't know if there's an Israeli match on this due in Britain at all. So, but we are importing all this.
Yes, it's horrific. Why we allowed this to happen? I keep coming back to it. Secularism. Anything goes. Everything's the same. Everything's equal. All ideologies and belief systems equal. We all hold the same values across the world according to cultural relativism. Rubbish. Yeah. There's a group of people in this country, okay, that we've allowed to come in who are racist. Okay, they're racist against Jews. That's it. End of. They're quite open about it as well. You know, it's not like they're not saying that they're not racist against the Jews, because they are. And some people say, okay, well, we don't believe, we're not so much against Jewish people. We just don't like the state of Israel. I don't think it's got a right to exist. Oh, well. Oh, so you think it's fine for the alternative to take place, which is for Jews to be hunted down and killed, which is exactly what's happening. If they could if Israel didn't exist now, how many Jews do you think would be left on the earth right now, considering what's going on? Many would flee to America again, but even there, I mean, there's been, under the Biden administration, there's been a heck of a change of direction in attitudes towards Jewish people there. So, you know, again, you're going to get some comments, oh, you two are just shilling for Israel. It's like, please, you don't know enough. If that's what you think, you don't know enough. You need to do some research. Please go and do it. I'm not being nasty, but you really do need to go and have a little bit of research into world events and the history of Israel. And you don't just go and say about the Balfour Declaration. We all know about that, but there's a lot more behind that as well, if you go back. Yeah.
In fact, the League of Nations, when they gave the British the mandate to create a state for Israel, it was done with a unanimous vote in the League of Nations, the precursor to the United Nations.
Yeah.
So bear that in mind. Everyone looked at this in great detail. In fact, if you go into the archives, they've got reams of information about the whole thing. They even looked at the trade situation and loads of stuff before they came to their decisions. And the worst thing was that World War II got in the way and did cause some problems, because Britain lost a lot of clout, a lot of money in the process, and became an easier target and harder to follow through on that mandate. And that caused problems as well. So, there's a lot behind this.
There's an interesting, slight detour here. One for you, Jeff, actually. Thank you to MJV for your super chat, blah, blah, blah. And the question is, Jeff, I don't know if you do know anything. Any news about Tommy? I don't know any current news.
No, I'm not in the central loop. I'm sort of on the periphery, really, and I do keep my ear to the ground. He's been getting a lot of emails. And funny, I did email him using that prison email system that you can use, emates, and I had a reply. Trouble is, the prison wouldn't let me see it for some reason. They screened it out. So I don't know. So I shall send him a few more emails. The trouble is that is it very easy to bombard? I think he's probably getting loads from his family, loads from his close friends and confidants and all the rest of it, and his lawyers and all the rest of it. So I'll just throw in a few now and again just to keep it going, just so that he gets something. But the next event, I believe, is on the 13th. Of this month, which is his trial for not handing over his PIN code to his phone when he was stopped at the airport under the Terrorism Act. And that's what that one's all about. Now, the only thing I will say about that is not sort of, if they do find him guilty, it's a terrorism offence. So which prison will he go to, and those sorts of things. But hopefully on the day, the fact he's a journalist, he runs a journalist company, Urban Scoop. It is a journalism thing. It produces journalistic material. Surely it'll be viewed as a journalist who doesn't have to hand his PIN code of his phone over. I don't know how they'll view it.
Hopefully, this will just go away. So a quick one from thank you to Civil Defence UK for your super chat. That I can't have my glasses. That mad, I can't read it.
That Madapasa, this is the guy who who said when he was outside the UK that he wanted to do something to a certain Nigel Farage, and has been placed in a hotel in the northwest.
I don't know. Well, that's interesting.
No, that's the first I've heard of that. Need to go and have a look.
Yeah, we need to find out about that.
So if he's not independent and he's free to move about after saying something like that, then why have we locked people up for 2 to 3 years for saying less than that?
Yeah, well, if this is true, I mean, my goodness.
Yes. Yes, it is.
What has happened to Britain? What has happened to Europe?
Well, what's happened to Britain?
Earlier, I find it really, really annoying that you've got the fact that we had World War II where people went to war against the real far right. Okay, who incidentally were called the National Socialists.
Yeah, they were actually far left.
Yeah, but what my point here is we had people who gave up their lives. Children growing up without a father because they'd lost their parents in the war. The sacrifices that were made for this country and for Europe and for the Jewish people, okay? And yet the descendants of those people who died are just throwing it back in their faces by going on these marches. I'm not talking about the imported demographic now. I'm talking about people living here, who've been living here for multi-generations. Yeah. And I think it's sickening, utterly sickening.
Right. This is part of the reason David Lammy needs to go. The very fact that we've got David Lammy in such a high position in our government doesn't augur well for the future, does it? Because whenever he's talking to an American, they'll know what he thinks. They'll know what's in the back of his mind. They'll know. He hasn't, as far as I'm aware, he hasn't changed his mind. I haven't seen him actually. Has he apologized for what he said? I don't think he has. Unless I'm wrong, I might be wrong. I might be doing him a great big disservice. But I haven't seen. I'm sure it'd be all over the press if he came out with an abject apology. But he hasn't.
Yeah.
Trump puts people and country first. Starmer puts the people and country last. He puts everything else first, doesn't he? His own political beliefs, his open borders, everyone's equal. Every philosophy in the world is equal, so they can all come here and do. This is what multiculturalism is all about. These people, but culture isn't just about. I wear a different type of hat. I have different coloured clothes. I have different music. I eat different food. No, culture also includes your attitude to animals, children, and women, and the elderly. And to honesty and things like that. That applies to your culture as well. I'm sorry, but it does. And
the two things got mixed together, didn't they?
Sorry?
They got mixed together. But what became mixed together in the eyes of the left was multiculturalism and multi-ethnicity, which are two entirely separate things. You can be any colour. It doesn't matter. If you're British, you're British. That's it. It doesn't matter what colour you are. But what does matter is the mindset in which you exist within this country. Are you going to be? Are you pro-British when you're living here, or do you hate Britain? I mean, if you hate Britain, anyone who hates Britain, you have the right to leave. What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here if you hate this country. Sorry. If you're not here to work for the betterment of this country, it's one thing to hate the way that the government is. Oh yes, that's a very different matter. That's a case of having an opinion, a political opinion, and your own personal bias reflecting into your motivations with that, and what you do about your hatred of a country personally, of a political party and government. Personally, I think we should politically motivate ourselves. We should be looking at political parties that represent us, like Reform, like UKIP. Find out who represents the people, who represents Great Britain, and then back it. But as for those who would push on us this multicultural thing, multicultural means that the culture of the land that you're living in, it's not actually the bedrock. It's just removing the bedrock and the foundation. It's saying, no, that's not right. We don't need that. We don't want that. Jeff?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But we do need a bedrock of our own culture and our own religion. And we should say that's what it is. And we should encourage it, and we should foster it, and we should strengthen it, because that is our bedrock. If everything is shifting because there loads and loads of people are coming in and changing it, what's left for us, for the majority? It gets stripped out of us. The minorities are always in charge, and that shouldn't be the case. I'm sorry, it should not be the case.
Of course it shouldn't. Why would it's not democratic in that the whole thing is not democratic. As soon as you push the weight of opinion upon your minorities, all of a sudden the majority become the second-class citizens. We've seen this too many times, reflected demographically with multiple things, not just ethnicities. There are other things in this country where an agenda, we'll call it, has been forced upon us to believe a certain thing is right, something that would have been abhorrent many generations ago. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Who am I to judge these things? But
not from years ago, anyway.
Exactly.
It's
changing.
Definitely we have imported so much culture that does go against our traditional culture, I suppose, the way we used to look at things. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Now, you could say, oh, it's food, as I said, oh, it's all about food. You don't like curry, obviously. You just want your roast beef on a Sunday and all this sort of thing. But it's not about that. It's about attitude to women and animals and children a lot of the time, and to honesty. And in certain cultures, I'm not saying it's good or bad, some form of, bribes and stuff like that is okay. It's all part of their system. It goes on around in various parts of the world. Do we want that here? Do we want to go into your local council office and be expected to hand over a little brown envelope to get your bins emptied on time and stuff like that? Yeah. So, and that does happen. So,
Again, cultural relativism. It's right through the left. It's right through the thinking. I mean, to be honest with you, I even fell for it in my early 20s because I hadn't lived a life. When you're young and stupid, you don't get to experience it. The one good thing is that the next generation coming up, I think they call them the Generation Z, or whatever, that generation are living with the negative impact of mass immigration on Britain and Europe. They are not liberal left. And this has been a bit of a shock to the left wing. I remember people like Owen Jones did an interview in the streets of this country in England, where he interviewed a chap, and he was shocked to find that, oh my gosh, they're supporting reform, and they're not liberal left. They don't believe in cultural relativism. What's going on? What's going on? And there was another guy from the Vara media, who's also half Iranian, incidentally, like myself. And he was interviewing some people, and he couldn't believe, why are all these people, these young people, these youngsters, why are they all not liberal lefties? What's going on? Well, they've had to live, and they live with the impact of mass immigration, and it's not a pleasant thing.
Yeah, they live with the impact of actually being told, you're British, you're white, therefore you are below everybody else because of your heritage, because of the slavery that you indulged in, and because you are just white. And that's a crime now. That's what they've had to put up with in schools, universities. I've been sent a few things from various courses by people, and it's absolutely mind-boggling what our children are having forced down their throats in school about this. They have to, they're at the back of the queue, basically. How can the majority be told they're at the back of the queue and put up with it for much longer? This brainwashing, this this lefty brainwashing, this wokeness is not working. It's not working anymore. It worked on the previous generation, but it's not working on the new one. They've seen right through it.
Yeah.
Now, here's a comment. There is more to the 3 Southport children than meets the eye, ? This is the problem, isn't it? Because we weren't told the truth at the start, because it wasn't made clear, because they used the guy's age to hide it all from us, suddenly everyone's questioning everything, absolutely everything.
Well, yes.
And why not?
They also hid his ethnicity from us. They also used his ethnicity against the argument because he's supposed to be from a Christian extraction, we'll say. So, that was hidden. Well, I mean, maybe he still is. We don't know. We can't speculate.
I know.
You're not allowed to speculate. So we have to be very careful with this topic. More to the... I mean, it's horrible that we have to have this conversation about 3 children that potentially the relatives of those children are watching this podcast right now. And my heart bleeds for you. Honestly, it does. And I just think that why we this should never have happened. None of these things should have happened. And there is one thing that doesn't meet the eye on this. So it goes more than meets the eye. And that is the way that the government responded. There has been a cover-up. There's no 2 ways about it. What they are trying to cover up in total, we don't know. But we know that something is fully amiss. Questions are being raised as well. Robert Jenrick made an interesting question in the House of Commons. Was it yesterday or the day before? Yeah. But, quickly over here. Thank you to James Rooney for your super chat. New sub here. My new go-to channel. Brilliant. Keep it up. My mood has skyrocketed since Trump getting in. Well,
oh, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And lovely to have you over at the channel as well.
Yeah,
and
thanks.
If you're watching this, please do like and subscribe, particularly subscribe. We need you to subscribe. It helps the channel. Liking is a very important thing. You just got to do a little click. If you enjoy what we do, please give this back to us. Just doing that. And also have to say thank you to those who help us with donations with Patreon, PayPal, and also super chats. Thank you all. Anyway, carry on, Jeff.
Yes. Yeah, this is a good observation from Ollie. The English have no representation as a whole, only county reps. And this is what annoys me is that it's fine to be Scottish, fine to be Northern Irish, fine to be Welsh. You're not fine to be English. Ooh, no, they've done all their best to destroy the whole concept of England, and that goes a lot of the way to destroying the whole concept of the UK. It just tries to split us all up, and they try to sort of regionalize us so that we're easy meat. And the English do need to get together and start becoming English again. There's nothing wrong with being proud to be English. If you can be proud to be Scots, you can be proud to be English, proud to be Welsh, and proud to be Northern Irish. The only time that this is ever allowed is when you're playing football and rugby. Apart from that, it's if you want to be English, you're deemed to be some sort of racist because you've got that flag and you trumpet it. And I just find it reprehensible that people actually accept this these days. I really do.
Yeah, it's disgusting. I've said too many times, I mourn England. I love England, as has been revealed earlier. I don't have a drop of Welsh blood in me. But I do love England. I love Wales, obviously, for various reasons. It's the greatest place on earth as far as I'm concerned. But there we go.
You can't say that.
Well, England, it's where I always wanted to live. Until recently, I have travelled around England a lot more and found that it's not the place that I went to as a youngster. London is gone. Why would anybody want to go to London unless you have to? Really, what's there? What is there? It's terrifying.
Yeah. I don't like it that much. I do go there, as you know, for various things, but it's very nice to come back home again. So, yeah.
But how long until home is just like the rest of London? How long until this change seeps right across every corner of this country?
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. Someone's put up a comment referencing the elderly man in, I think it was Edinburgh, hit by a bus. Something nasty happened to him. And that's raised a lot of questions as well from people who know the area and question what was going on, because nothing seems to add up with that case either. I don't know.
Well, we just don't know. That's the thing. They won't tell us. Why are we not being told anything?
This one, the government are extremely quiet about the alleged bus running over a man incident too. Yeah. So yes. This
is the problem, and this was to do with the question that Robert Jenrick brought up. I wish I could quote that for you right now, but I think there's been advice given to the government that on certain matters, it is best to reveal all things as much as possible to the public, and because otherwise, idle speculation can lead to extreme overreaction, even.
Yeah. I mean, it gets people like you and me talking.
Yeah, well, we have seen some major overreaction in this country, and then the state's overreaction to that overreaction. Massively overreacting the state has been. So,
yes. Anyway, what's the time? Oh, it's getting on a bit. It's been nice to talk to everybody, and thanks for the super chats, and thanks very much for the interaction in the comments. There's loads and loads and loads of stuff. I can only skim over most of it. It's really good to see everybody coming together and sort of talking about this sort of stuff. We do need this conversation, this type of conversation, to go out around the country, and it should be mainstream conversation. Half the time, as you see, when Richard and I are discussing stuff, we're having to use terminology and words that you understand but aren't direct to the point. And this is really disheartening when we can't go straight to the point and say, there's an issue, what are we doing about it? Because if you can't do that, if you can't talk about an issue, you will never, ever, ever solve it. It will never be solvable because no one can discuss it. And that's the scary thing, don't you think?
Yeah.
Anyway, anything to add, Richard?
Well, just that, going back to the point of this video, in Amsterdam, Jews have been hunted down and attacked in Amsterdam. And how is this happening in the 21st century? This is the question. We always, when I was growing up and I was in school, there was always a saying in our history lessons when we were studying what happened in World War II, and that was "never again." Yeah, never again. And yet here it is. As you rightly said, this is the city in which Anne Frank lived, I believe, and where this attack took place. And never again. The next not the next generation, but the millennials, I'll call them, and a lot of those who have been, not all the millennials, but you know the demographic I'm on about. Yeah, they are determined to make sure it does happen again. Yeah, it does seem like it, doesn't it? It really is consigned to the dustbin. Yeah, it really does seem like it. Anyway, on that note, it's goodbye from me. Aye, and it's goodbye from him. Goodbye.